Yeah. And I like what you said. It shows up a lot of different ways. And a big problem is that we don't take time to like sit and read a book like this to explore what your tendencies are. Or am I satisfied in my job? Am I satisfied with how much I give? Am I satisfied with the boundaries I have created? You know, I think it's just, we're in this fast paced cycle of life. You know, I've got 3 kids and 2 jobs, and I'm constantly filling up my calendar with a million things when all I really want to do is sit down and read a damn book. I sat on my porch and read this, and I was like, this is what I want to be doing. This is the best day I've had in a very long time. Because I just sat down and slowed down to even explore, what am I doing? Like what boundaries have I created, and how is it serving me? How's it affecting my relationships, or what happened in my childhood? Like when you talk about the chaotic upbringing and then how it can play into your life, I was like, holy shit, I need another therapy appointment right now. So thank you for just your insight, and then walking you through, you know, the ways that it can look. It's so different for everybody.
So for you, let me just ask you, because you guys are now sort of on this boundary boss path, are you being able to put down some of the compulsion or the desire to overgive and overfunction and control outcomes? Because let's really think about codependency, any kind, is a covert or overt desire to control outcomes for other people. We don't want our partner who's an alcoholic to get fired, so we lie when the person calls and says, are they really sick? And you say yes, but really they're just hungover, right? All of that is enabling codependency in both of those scenarios. But have you guys been able to put down some of the overfunctioning and overdoing?
I think for me, it's still like, now I'm hyper aware, where I'm like, holy shit, what the hell do I do? You know, recognizing what I'm carrying that isn't mine to carry. What problems am I trying to solve? Like when you had said it's uncomfortable to not give a solution when that's so ingrained. And I think growing up, being someone who always met other people's needs, that's so ingrained in me that now it's like, what even are my own needs? Gaining clarity. Like right now, I feel like I'm in a big clarity phase where what do I want? What are my deal breakers? In past relationship, I was totally dismissed and, oh, you're just being sensitive and quiet, and those shadow tendencies that we can get into, because I think it's fascinating. It was like, okay, what toxic behaviors then did I develop to almost forget sight of who I was because it wasn't accepted? So I'm just in a big growth phase, and like, what boundaries do I even need to set?
The shadow addictions talk, I was like, oh my gosh, I do this. The second I'm uncomfortable with a feeling, whether it's, you know, an anxious thought or feeling, anger, anything, I go for a run. And it's because I don't want to sit with it.
Right.
And I was like, what a great way to cope. And now I'm like, oh God, I'm totally avoiding figuring out this uncomfortable feeling. So can we talk a little bit about those shadow addictions and what they are and what we're supposed to do about them once we realize what we do?
Well, shadow addictions, they are similar to hardcore addictions because they're mood-altering behaviors, but they're socially acceptable mood-altering behaviors. You gave the perfect example of, I have a feeling I don't like, I go for a run. No one is going to be like, oh my God, I'm worried about you, right? Like it's fine. They're like, this is amazing. It's so healthy. So it could be anything from, many people drink 2 to 3 glasses of wine a night, like every night. It could be smoking weed, gummies. It could be spending money, right? Could just be online shopping. Could even be just falling into a Netflix hole for like hours on end, which everyone does sometimes. But it's when you're doing it, what is the precipitating event? What is kicking off the behavior? And is it, as you just said, there's a desire to mood alter. I do not want to feel the way that I feel. When we start to identify shadow addictions, because the thing is, they're not free, right? Because if you never sit with the feeling, and now I know that you're aware of it, you're going to, but if you never allow yourself to feel that anxiety, make friends with it, go, okay, so what really happened? When did I start feeling this way? It was after that conversation I had with Betty, let's say, whoever. What in that conversation provoked me? I see, I felt threatened by what she said about whatever. Like everything we need to more deeply understand ourselves is in that experience. And I think that people don't understand that these things can be self-sabotaging. Because even if you never miss a day of work, let's say, but you're drinking big glasses of wine a night, that is impacting you. That is dulling your senses. That is numbing your feelings. Becomes this habit that negatively impacts, not to mention alcohol is a depressant. There's a million other, it's bad for your brain, shrinks your brain, literally. So we're not going to be coming from our best problem solving self if that is what we're using to problem solve. So you can look at your lives, and we all know it. Listen, we all know what our shadow addictions are. If you can't do the thing you want to do, so let's just say your shadow addiction is working out 2 hours a day, let's say, and then you're traveling or something happens or the pipe breaks in your gym and you can't go. If that like ruins your day, if you're like, well, then I need to walk to work the 17 miles because I need to get my point, need to get my steps in. This tells you if you can't not do the thing, then it's some kind of a compulsion, which means that there's more of a dependency on that numbing than you want there to be. Another part of this process of like sort of revealing, I had this experience with one of my clients during the pandemic, and she was drinking. A lot of people were drinking more and smoking more weed. And there was a lot of an uptick in numbing behaviors, which a lot of that was very normal. We were in a friggin' global pandemic. We were like, hi, are we going to live? Like we were scared, exhausted. Some people were now working from home who never get to work from home, sleeping 3 more hours a night because of that. Like some people were like, I'm kind of on vacation. Other people were like, I'm totally in hell. But everyone had an excuse to indulge more. They're like, whatever, if it's the end of the world, I'm eating pasta. I don't care about gluten. Like literally, this was what my clients were saying to me. So she was upset and saying, I really don't want to drink during the week anymore. I've been drinking 3 glasses of wine a night. It's too much. I feel hazy in the morning. Like I just need to stop. So for like 2 weeks in a row, she's like, I'm going to, hold me accountable. I'm going to, you hold me accountable in our sessions and whatever. And I'm like, okay. So first week she comes in, she's like, I only made it to Monday. I drank on Tuesday night. I can't, it's just, what is wrong with me? I have no willpower. Something's wrong. Well, next week comes in, she's like, I literally didn't even make it to Monday. I drank on Monday night. Like I didn't even make it one day. And she's like, and then I was like, oh, because I knew she wasn't an alcoholic. Like she was a long-term client and she had not had that kind of an addiction problem before. I knew she had increased use. And I said, so let's talk about secondary gain. Like, what are you getting from those 3 glasses of wine? Because you're getting something. So don't think, just answer this question. What do you get to not face, not feel, or not experience by drinking 3 glasses of wine a night? And she immediately said, I get to not face the state of my marriage. I was like, oh, well, then we should be talking about the state of your marriage because that's actually the problem. And any behavior that you find yourself doing or any place where you find yourself stuck in your life, you can use those secondary gain questions. Secondary gain is the unobvious gain, right? Nobody wants to drink 3 glasses of wine a night and feel ashamed about it. Nobody wants to do that. But I knew there was something underneath there. It was fulfilling a need that she had. And once she revealed what it was, then we were able, of course, to unpack what was happening in her marriage and help her make the decision to end her marriage, actually is what she decided to do. But, like we all experience secondary gain, and very gently we can reveal the secondary gain by simply answering those questions. What do I get to not face, not feel, or not experience by staying stuck here?
I feel like that's something that people, they know the answer, but they don't even want to go there. Like it's uncomfortable and painful to do this work, to think about setting boundaries and what are people going to say? I don't even know what boundaries to set. It's like you call the internal asshole committee. When you start to do this work, the thoughts that you have, it's like you want to numb because you don't want to hear the bitch in you keep talking. Like my internal asshole committee just screams at me. And I think getting in situations like drinking or doing things that necessarily we don't want to be doing, but we want to let loose and have fun. And then there's like the devil on your shoulder. Don't do this or don't do that. So I'm curious what your advice is for the internal asshole committee and how to be nicer to ourselves. Like, why are we so damn mean to ourselves?
Oh, so many good questions in there. Well, let's start with someone who says, I don't even know what boundaries I should have. And I'm overwhelmed, right? I will just, for that person, I'm just suggesting that you do a resentment inventory because that will tell you immediately where a need is not being met, a boundary is being crossed. Maybe it's a boundary you haven't expressed, but if you're holding on to resentment, I'm going to say there's a really good possibility in that place where you're holding resentment for that person, a boundary is needed. So that would be a place for people who go, I have no idea. It's too overwhelming. No, it's not. Just do a resentment inventory and it'll tell you exactly where to start. So there's that. Back to the inner a-hole committee. So let's talk about this. Here's the thing. There's more than one reason why. Most of us have an inner punitive or sort of harsh, judgy voice, right? That compares us to other people unfavorably. That's like, well, that's what you get for being an idiot, like, or whatever, like just mean things. And it's so interesting because when we think about that voice, I'll always say to my clients, well, would you say that to your 5-year-old niece who you love? Would you use that tone of voice and use those words? And she's like, obviously not. I'm like, right. So let's just make a rule. You need to talk to yourself as nicely and with as much kindness as you would your 5-year-old niece that you adore, because you deserve that. You are that 5-year-old kid. You are worthy of that compassion and consideration, especially your own. So looking at, could this be an internalized voice? Meaning a lot of times, if we had critical adults in our life, mean adults in our life, drunk adults in our life, neglectful adults in our life, we heard things. Someone might have said to you, well, your sister's the pretty one and you're the smart one. Now, some people would think that's a compliment, but of course, if you're a kid, you'd be like, wait a minute, I want to be the pretty and the smart one. What are you talking about? Or whatever. Then you have really mean parents who just say terrible things like you're ugly or you're stupid or I didn't want to have you or whatever. You weren't wanted. I mean, I can't. Being a therapist for 25 years, you just cannot believe how mean and dysfunctional some people are. And so when we're done living with those people, we have internalized that voice. So they stop doing it in real life because they don't have the same access. Well, we just pick up the ball. We just go, oh, now I hear that voice. We will hear that voice. So awareness is so key when we are shifting the scripts of that inner a-hole committee. Now we're going to make it be our inner friend committee, right? We're going to flip it into supportiveness, that looking at the inner a-holes, most of the time, fear-driven, ego-driven, and how I look at it and like to look at it is that they're trying to keep you safe. They don't want you to take a risk. They don't want something bad to happen. And even if they have to shame you into it or however they have to do it, it's so fear-based, all of that stuff. So rather than being like, shut the F up and sit the F down, which, there's that's a thought too. I think it's much more productive to integrate that fearful part and talk to that part like, hey, I know you're scared, but we're okay. Don't worry. Like, we don't let the inner committee, whatever they're saying, they cannot drive the van of your life. You cannot believe it. You must know that you are worthy. If you're confused about that, I want you to look at a baby picture of yourself. Look at that little face. You're going to tell me that that little kid doesn't deserve everything, all the things, all the love, respect, adoration? They do. Oh, that little kid is you. You deserve all of those things right now in life. And so we start with ourselves, because really, when we think about how self-love comes into all of this, and I feel like people talk about self-love and you're like, ugh, it's so amorphous. What does it even mean? Just love yourself more. But that's not that helpful, I find. Self-love is really about the way we treat ourselves, right? Do we hold ourselves in high regard? Do we rest when we're tired? Or do we work ourselves to death? Do we not rest when we're tired? Do we overgive, overcommit? Are we hanging on by a thread because of all of this overfunctioning and people pleasing and all the crap that we're doing? Now, keep in mind how you relate to yourself sets the bar for every other relationship in your life. So if you hold yourself in high esteem, treat yourself with respect, kindness, compassion, care, rest when you're tired, don't overcommit, say no when you can't do something, give yourself permission to change your mind if you started something and you hate it, like all of those things, you will inevitably attract people who go, oh, that's how she is to be treated, how she's treating herself. That's how she is to be treated. And when we treat ourselves like crap, don't rest when we're tired, work ourselves to death, talk badly about ourselves, have all of this negative self-talk out there. We don't want to threaten other people, so we put ourselves down to be small so no one else feels threatened by us, all that stuff. What do? We attract someone else who agrees with that low self-assessment. So it really is incredibly important, if what we're seeking in life is to be respected and loved and considered, that we must first respect, love, and consider ourselves. And that will start the dominoes where now this is how you will be treated.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is why she is thriving all over the place, because holy shit, that was
so beautiful.
So beautiful. Can you make that an insight timer? And I can just, actually, it's fine. It'll be on Ivy Unleashed, and I'll just play that section every morning when I wake up.
It's unbelievable, because I do like digging into this book. It's so much about self-worth and everything that you're saying. Like you even say in there, like put a picture of yourself up as a little kid if you need to, as a reminder of who you're talking to. Like, because that's the person that's, the way that they were treated and everything they had to go through. Like, have compassion for that little kid. Like, it makes me emotional when you're saying that. I was like, oh my gosh, to think of like my 7-year-old self and what I needed.
Yes.
And it's like, why am I so mean to her? Like, I'm so mean to her. And my parents weren't mean to me. They weren't around much though. So what I'm confused about is like, I do have like perfectionist tendencies and the overcommitting and trying to do the best and achieve and all of this stuff. But I'm wondering why my inner critic is so mean when like my parents weren't mean to me.
Well, here's the thing. Neglect, right, is just a different form of being unimportant. So they wouldn't need to be actively mean for you as a child to feel neglected if they weren't around, and to have that impact how valuable you thought you were.
Yeah. I think that comes the perfectionist too, is I'll just work and my output equals my worth.
My value.
Yeah. Like being abandoned as a child, if I just do more, I'll be noticed. He'll come back. And now it's like through the work we've done and the guests we've had on, and it's just repeating, like you being born is your key to having self-worth. Like it is your inherent
value.
Yeah, your inherent
like
value.
You do not need to, like I would say, like look at babies, right? They don't need to like cook us dinner or like throw us a parade or like light themselves on fire for us to love them. Just by the sheer nature that they were born, we're like, oh my God, you're amazing. So you don't need to earn your value. You are inherently valued simply by the virtue of being alive. And it's really getting that and treating yourself And, I walk you through it in the book, sort of step by step, because the self-care aspect of this book is a really big part of this book. It's in every single chapter, ideas and thoughts and exercises and things that you can do, because it is so lacking in the lives of most women in particular, where we're constantly prioritizing the thoughts, desires, needs of others above our own. And in doing so, we are depleted and exhausted. And then eventually, this leads directly to becoming a martyr in life, where you really feel like people owe you. You're like, after everything I've done for Betty, like literally, where you think now, you guys are young, you're like, that'll never be me. No. If we don't shift, and if we don't fill up our own bucket, and if we don't think we're worthy of taking a break, taking a vacation, people paying us back, getting paid overtime, all of the ways that we avoid conflict by abandoning ourselves, it just kills self-esteem. It just racks your self-esteem, because you're saying it's more important to keep the peace than for me to get what is owed me, or for me to be recognized for my work. Like if we let someone sort of steal our idea or steal our work, and you feel embarrassed to say like, hey, that was my idea. No, it's learning that if you watch that happen and your best friend or your sister and someone was ripping off their idea right in front of your face, you'd be like, no way, Bob. No, that was Jane's idea. That wasn't you. Like you would never be like, I don't want to upset Bob from accounting. You wouldn't care. You would stick up for that person that you love. So I'm just teaching you how to do all of that for yourself.
Yeah, and I love it's more self-love is what I got out of your book, right? You have the practice of creating a Zen den, which I love, and cozying up with a tea. These things that are actually nurturing us so that we can do this deep, vulnerable work, meeting that child, our child self, and coming with compassion, actually filling our cup up, not doing the manicure and the pedicure, but actually the stuff that matters. And so I love the way you outline it and you simplify it. That's what we're all about here, is how can we make this easier to feel better faster?
Yes.
And it's not a quick fix, right? It's a lifelong thing that, you're right, we're not going to get to the certain point in our lives where then we're a martyr. We have this love for others because we loved ourselves first. And I think identifying that both Andrew and I are perfectionists and where that comes from. In the book, you talk about perfectionism versus striving for excellence. And so I'd love to get into that of, we are in a hustle culture right now, and we have big dreams and we want to make money so we can do the things that we want to do. But how do we do it in a way where we're taking care of ourselves and we're not perfectionists, we just want excellence?
Well, part of it is perfectionism ruins everything. So perfectionism, there is no perfect, right? Let's get real about life. I hate when clients say, oh my God, it was perfect. I'm always like, how about it was wonderful? How about it was amazing? How about it was extraordinary? There is nothing that is perfect, because people who have a tendency to be like, it was perfect, it's usually either it was perfect or it was a fucking disaster. Like there's almost like nothing. If it didn't go perfectly, then it was a disaster, no matter how small the thing that went wrong. So again, it's like a prison of striving, perfectionism. Not to mention it's terrible for your relationships, because then we put all of these crazy expectations on other people. Now they got to be perfect. And if they're not, we're like, bye, you're out because you don't have this thing. Like it's very rigid. These are very rigid boundaries that can come along at times with perfectionism, even if we're just being very rigid with ourselves. Like I'm going to redo it one more time or rewrite it one more time, even though you've written it 5 times, right? Because I feel like it could be that much better. You might give a talk and it went perfectly, except you misspoke one thing and then you corrected it. And if you're a perfectionist, you can't stop. Someone's like, oh my God, that was amazing. And you're like, oh yeah, but besides that thing towards the end, like you
Totally.
can't stop yourself from just pointing out the thing that wasn't perfect. And I think that striving for excellence is all about learning and evolving and accepting that everything that matters is messy. Life is messy. Love is messy. Relationships are messy. Raising kids is messy. Life itself is delicious, amazing, painful, awful, and messy. That's what it is. So this striving for perfection can just take us out of life. and wanting it to be like it's such a control thing. And it's painful. It's painful for the people. It's painful for you. Now, it happens a lot from chaotic upbringings, from any situation, almost in childhood. A very strict upbringing can create it. A very chaotic upbringing can create it. Because what happens is it's something that we can control. So we start striving to get away from, it's kind of like Andrea's running, right? Like to get away from the way we don't want to feel. Mm-hmm. We're like, well, this will most likely not get me negative attention, right? If I strive, maybe it'll get me my father's attention if I get straight A's. Maybe then I will be the head of the editor of the newspaper, and I'll be a cheerleader, and I'll be all of these things. And a lot of times for kids from sort of dysfunctional households, which is P.S. everybody, it's good to, in a way, to strive and do those things in school because you're in a safe place and you're doing something that is productive. Again, very adaptive skills that we develop in dysfunctional upbringings. Like that's just a fact, right? If I didn't grow up the way I did, I wouldn't be an empath. I wouldn't have become a therapist, like all of those things, right? So it's not about having regrets about them. It's about looking at how do you want to live? How do you want to feel? And really reminding yourself that being a perfectionist is not a badge of honor. Being a workaholic, nobody should be throwing you a parade. This is just dysfunctional stuff. Think about it the same way if you were like, I'm an alcoholic. You wouldn't say I'm an alcoholic with a smile on your face and be like, man, I'm just a worker. You would know it's dysfunctional. So I want you to think the same way about perfectionism, like just put it down. Just strive for excellence, because that is really the only thing we can achieve. And it makes the rest of it, if there are mistakes, quote unquote, that's just called life. This is just life school. So it's learning. Instead of being like, oh, damn that mistake, it's like, okay, so let me see what gem of wisdom is in this experience for me. And if it's something you don't want to repeat, be like, okay, so how did it happen? Let me think about it. Not beating ourselves up, not feeling terrible. Deepak would call it, becoming the observer without judgment. Become radically curious about what happened instead of letting like the shame envelop you and the regret and all of those just feelings that do nothing good for us. They just deplete our energy and we don't learn anything, Anyway, wow, that was long.
Oh, I love it. It's so true though. If you really switch, like it's just the shame. It's like turning off the shame. I like how you said, literally just set it down. Mm-hmm. Like being the perfectionist or the striver, like it served its purpose, right? Like it kept me out of my house. It kept me safe in a safe environment with guidance in church and leaders and coaches that really helped me during the time. But now it's like when my summer's chaotic and my house is kind of messy and I feel behind in work, it's like I am beating the crap out of myself in my head. And it's like you just saying what you said is setting me free, literally, to be like, life is supposed to be messy. I have 5 people that live here. We live here. It should be kind of messy. It's okay that I cannot keep up with my laundry. We keep leaving because I'm overbooking my shit. Well,
I think it's identifying why you're getting upset when it is messy, because that's what your childhood was like. And you don't want to repeat that cycle. And thinking about it puts you back in that headspace of, oh shit, I do not want to be here. I cannot repeat this.
Well, and my biggest fear, and Terri, oh my gosh, I'm so excited to talk to you about this, is